And what I think is that one of the many things that makes this time you're alive, we're alive, so significant, which is what I am going to explore with you this morning, is that how we understand God is changing. And we need to understand that. And we need to understand the importance of that in our life. We can't miss this moment. We cannot miss it. This is one of the most important passages in the history of civilization, and we are the ones who are alive now, and in the generations to come. But we're the ones alive. If you've ever read times like the Renaissance and thought, what was that like to be alive? In the future, people will read about this time and wonder, what was it like to be alive when those people when the world was shifting, when they were entering a galactic age? Did they have any idea that they were shifting from being a planetary community to a galactic community? Did they have any idea what was happening to them? That's what we're living. So one of the dynamics that's changing is that how we understand the nature of the divine. Instead of an off-planet being that we reel in when we're in crisis, it is a force that we're learning that we co-create reality. But what we haven't figured out, what we've never examined, is why we need to understand that. Why do you need to understand that? And what does it mean? And how does that change the way in which you dialogue with a divine force in which you're finally realizing I'm an engine of co-creation? Sometimes, Lord, I can sense that an angel is near me, or that I've stepped into the presence of angels. I cannot see your holy messengers, and yet I know they're near. They are very near. Someone asked me once, how do I know that? What does the presence of an angel feel like? And some questions have no answers. But I could see that this man wanted a reply that held a secret ingredient, a code perhaps. I know he wasn't questioning me out of arrogance. This man struck me as a grown-up child, longing to somehow find a way to encounter the sacred, if only he could glimpse the wing of an angel, the mere flutter of proof that the invisible world is filled with benevolent guardians of light. I do not know how to penetrate the wall of doubt in people, Lord, but I see the consequences of that barrier in their lives constantly. This world is filled with angels constantly watching over their assigned human beings. If only they knew that. If only they truly knew that. So often I think of the comfort that truth would bring someone if they could realize it in the moment of fear and confusion, that assistance is hovering right next to them. And yet people do not understand the way of divine assistance. I understand that as well, the non-interference policy of angels. Guidance is their task, but choice is ours. No wonder we struggle so with choice. It's really between trust of the power of the sacred realm to guide us to move forward through that which you cannot see, as opposed to fighting your way through events that have already occurred. History, for anything in the physical world, is already history. It took me a long time to realize that mystical truth, to truly grasp the power that the stuff of the physical world is the end product of our choices, not the beginning. If we base our choices on what we see, we're responding to what has already happened. Real change begins in the invisible world, listening to the guidance of our angels. What is required again and again of us is to learn to trust that voice. So hover over me, Lord. Hover over me and make that voice louder. Amen. Okay. Well, hi. You're a youngster. Ooh. Fresh blood. Okay. I'm going to, who has not ever been with me before? Holy moly. Lots of fresh blood. Okay. I want to, and thank you and welcome. I see some new faces. We're going to start. We have a lot to cover today. We have so much to cover. All right, this is going to stick in your head for the rest of your life. It looks simple, but it's going to make all the difference. So memorize this. This is you, and I'm going to be teaching from this. This is a building, like any building in the city, like any building. When you're born, you are this building. You are a building. Once you're born, you're locked in, just like once a building is built, there it is. After that, all the movement in your life is within the building. It's inside. What floor? And I tell this story all the time because it's exactly what happened. I'm visiting a friend of mine in New York, a hot August day, and it's serious hot in New York in August. And it's fragrant, it smells, the garbage is in front of the building. It means just the whole thing. Cab drivers are loud in New York. They're very polite here. You don't have a New York cabbie, this kind of thing. And when I got to her building, I walked in on the first floor, so here's a door. I walk in, and she happened to live, she had the top. And I get to the top floor, and I walk in, and she had a balcony, a port. And honestly, it was no bigger than this area right here, right here. She had 2 little seats and a little round table, plants. It was like her micro Central Park. Queens Gate. It was like tiny. But this is huge real estate in Manhattan. We sat down. She gives me an iced tea. And it was actually a little cooler, not by much, but it was, than being on the street. And as evening came and I started to see the lights of Manhattan light up, and I could see the Empire State Building, and I could see the Hudson, and I could see New Jersey, and I could see the city was so beautiful. And it wasn't loud, and I couldn't smell the trash. And it was totally different, but it was the same address. And you know what occurred to me? Is that if I went down there and I said to someone, do you know you live next to the Hudson River and New Jersey and this and that, they could say I was lying. They could tell me that, and they would be right. The very same address. That they lived in a very loud, polluted place where they needed, symbolically, bars on the window to protect them from the people walking by who could never get to my place. Up here, where everything was almost idyllic. Idyllic. This is you. Every floor of your life, you have one floor in you after another, after another, after another. And every time you go up, just like in a condominium building, every time you go up a floor in yourself, you see a different view of your life. A different view of your life. But like a condominium building, every floor you go up is more expensive. You have to work harder to get to that floor in your own life. To get to a place where you see more of the significance of your life. To see more of what you could do and how many people you could reach in your life. Of all the difference you could make in your life. You see more. And what happens is, there'll come a point where the view could be too overwhelming. And you don't want to see anymore, and you start pulling down shades. Or you decide the rent's too high. You don't want to work that high to keep up the rent, to keep up that altitude. Like when you get to a place in health and you realize, when you get an insight and you realize my addictions really are responsible for why I'm not feeling well. And maybe you don't want to give up your addiction. You don't want to connect those two dots. You don't want to. It's a lot easier to think that it's your fault. Because down here on the second floor and the first floor, this is the floor where when you look at life, everything's everybody else's fault. And you like that. Because it's really easy to sit on the couch, surf, and say, it's your fault, and to blame everybody else, because that's the size of the view. And then everybody else has to change, but not you. But as you learn more about yourself, you realize you're the one who has to change, not everybody else. But at some point, that journey of inner change is going to really change your relationship with absolutely everything. Everything, including everybody. And eventually it will change your relationship with how you understand life itself. And that's the great leap. That's when you start really living high up here. And at that point, you lose contact with a lot of your neighbors down here. And you might want to come down and say to them, you can't imagine how life really is. And trust me when they tell you they don't want to know. They don't want to know. They don't want to understand that maybe we're the engines of climate change. Maybe they don't want to know about all the things that we are now learning. They don't want to know that because they just don't want to know that. Because what it means to understand that all life breathes together, that we're in this journey of life together, to recognize just that one sentence. All life breathes together. What that means is everything Jesus taught and everything Buddha taught about we are one system. We are one system. And if that's so, it really heightens the significance of how we treat each other. We can no longer treat each other as though we were not the same person because we are. It's no longer enough to just be charitable. We have to get that. What I do to one, I am actually doing to all. And further, what it actually means is, make sure you're covering your mouths. We're in virus mode. That when you look at your body, you have to treat your whole self as a micro-earth. A micro-earth, and all the laws that apply to how you understand nature. What happens to one cell tissue is communicated to all cell tissues. You are now one cell tissue in the whole fabric of life. What is in one is in the whole, and isn't that how the divine plan has always been? We are one interconnected system of life. That's how it's always been. That is the high voltage truth that is now animating. So I want you to hold that thought. And I just want to share something with you if I can. I don't mean to be direct about the virus consciousness, but let's face it, this is a moment where we have to start just being a little bit more thoughtful. Do you know what I'm saying? I hope that wasn't too blunt, but oh well. Yeah, I know. Okay, so funny thing is that my work started with AIDS. My first major lecture was with AIDS when I was, and I gave that lecture at Finhorn. And it was the first time, now, wait, before I go there, I'm going to put you back in the building. On your first floor, I want to repeat that you take everything literally. Now, this is really important for you to understand, because what that means is that when someone, the way you will interpret things, the way you interpret any problem is that you'll look at it immediately and you'll think, you won't look at the higher perspective. You won't say what's really going on here. You won't say what's the meaning. You won't say what are the other things that are influencing this that I cannot see. We're the hand of angels in this. You'll respond with, instead of responding with, by stepping back and saying, I want all the invisible details and the visible. I want my intuition to talk to me, as well as my intellect. Instead of doing that, when you're on the first floor, the tendency is to react instead of respond. Now, that's a big difference. In the first floor, the tendency will be to react with fear, like the stock market crashing. That's a classic first floor reaction. That's it. Shut the windows, lock the doors, keep everybody out of the borders, lock everything, throw them away, quarantine, quarantine, quarantine. That is classic first floor. Now, this is about choices and spiritual direction, and etc. So I want to keep your eye on the target. We all make first floor choices. Right now, hold that. This is your penthouse. And from the first floor to the penthouse is the journey of life. What's in the penthouse? Every time you go up a floor, how you understand the world that is your world opens up and gets broader and broader. Just for the heck of it, if you were to actually take an elevator up a building as an exercise and get out at every floor and go out and look out the same window and make note of what you see on this floor that you didn't see on the first floor. And then by analogy, make it your life and say, what would I understand if this was my life? What would I understand if I stretched my life that much more by looking out this second level of my life? If you actually made it the journey of your life, if I took you as a workshop and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going into a building. And now we're on the second floor. What do you see from here? And if you said, well, I didn't see that road, that road, and I didn't see that park. And then I would say to you, and what do they represent in your life? Make them represent something that you didn't see in yourself before you came up here. Then we go up one more floor. Let's say on the next floor, you for the first time spotted a river that you didn't know because you couldn't see it. You knew it was there, but symbolically. Like, oh, there's the river. I couldn't see it from my apartment on the first floor. Well, now you can. And what it begins to represent something flowing in you constantly that you think, I've got to make it connect to something in me that I want to flow constantly. Maybe your intuition. Maybe you consciously decide, I want to consciously acknowledge that I'm very intuitive, and on the first floor, I never paid attention, but now Now I'm going to acknowledge I get feelings all the time, and I'm not going to block them out. And that would change who you are completely, and not just who you are, but how you relate to everything in the world around you. Everything. You would become in that moment more inner than outer. Even though you see people, even though you talk to them, your first instinct would be to sense them. With every floor you go up, you're changing you, and how you relate to the world around you. So this is really, really, by the time you get to a certain level, here's your critical passage point. What happens is you go into a crisis, and it's a big one. It's a great, big, huge one. It's not a small one. It's not small. It's great, big, huge. And what this crisis is about is the transition from how much you need to hang on to who you are. How much of you have to hang on to. And the world that you have constructed around you for the sake of safety. Safety. And how much of that safety identity you can shed in order to let the next level of you come out. Okay? So I'm going to say this again, all right? That next level is this part. You know, it's an interesting thing. We don't realize that when we're born, we're not born knowing ourselves. It's such a phenomenon, but it's the truth. You're not born knowing yourself. You're not born knowing who you are or what your talents are or what you like. You have to get to know yourself just like your friends have to get to know you. You don't know who you are. Not at all. You're as much a surprise package to you as you are to everybody else. Don't assume you know yourself, because you don't. Because you don't. You don't know who you are. And so with every passing year and every passing decade, you are a new person to yourself. And relationships and experiences are all about you discovering, I had no idea I could be this angry. I had no idea I could love someone this much. I had no idea that. I had no idea that I wanted this. I had no idea. That's right, you had no idea. That's exactly right. Because all about life is about discovering who you are, the power of you. And in the first stages of our life, how we understand ourselves is based on what we think we want. Now, this is an important word, the power of words. What we think we want, what we think we have to have, and that's based on fear. So how we've constructed ourselves in the first couple of floors in our life, you haven't even seen the top 7 floors. You have no idea about how big and broad you are. You've simply put together an understanding of yourself based on appetites. Based on appetites. Oh, I want that, I want that, I want that, I have to have that. That's the person I want to marry, blah, 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 blah. It's all based on biochemical cravings and advertising. And someone telling you, that's how much money I need to earn, that's what I want, that's this. You're under spells. You're under absolute spells. Absolutely. Absolutely. And in the spells, it's a very rare person who actually has this little sense inside that says, this isn't right for me. I really, really am this person. I want to be an artist. I want to do this. I want to do that. Well, there's a whole sense of knowingness that comes from deep inside from the get-go. Are you with me? How many times when I remember saying to my mom a long, long time ago, I said, did you always want to be a mom? Well, yeah. And nothing surprises me more than when women would say, yeah, I always knew I would be a mother. But I was like, but it requires someone else to help you out with that. So how did you always know someone else would just show up? I mean, because it's not like baking a cake, I can go and get my own eggs. But when you need someone to fertilize them, I mean, it's a different issue. I mean, really, come to think of it, right? And that's where, in my whole thing, if I had to count on one other person for anything, it was a no-go. It was an absolute no-go. It was a not going there, not going there, not going there. But the way in which women knew, of course I'm going to be a mom. Of course. It was absolutely. That kind of knowing. Everybody has a certain kind of knowing. And yet, there are many choices you make early on that are also based around compromising that knowing. Are you with me? Around compromising. Okay. I have 14 years worth of things to teach you in a few hours. This crisis point, if we want to call it that, this transition point, is this, and I think many of you are in it, have experienced it, are experiencing it, or will. This crisis transition is about you going through the shedding of who you thought you were, what you thought you wanted, how you thought your life should be, the way you thought life was going, all the things you thought life was, the way you thought life was, how you thought things were going to be, everything. And it could be a personal crisis, a spiritual crisis. It could be a relationship crisis. I always thought I would be married forever, and then poof. I always thought I would do this job. I always thought this would happen. I always thought that would happen, only to find out it didn't. Because in the first couple of floors, when you are forming your identity, part of that journey of forming your identity is to make sure you pick out a map that's based on controlling the events that happen to you as best as you can. Are you with me? If I do this, then I know this should happen. If I take this job, this should happen. If I do this, then this. Because what your first instincts are is to control the map ahead of you. Yes? Yes. And then you find out that's impossible. Okay, I need to hit this pause button, and now I'm going to sweep you over here to add a parallel, essential conversation that you have to kind of get. Okay, now we're going to go up to the penthouse. Once the transition happens, what's the whole point of it? It's because during the transition, what is yanked out of you, one way or another, is the way you thought life was, not just your life, but life. And the way, so that it can open you up for you to scream out loud, what's really going on here? What's really going on here? So that somehow or other you can become detached, open to understanding the universe in a very different way. Now, There's 10,000 ways I can explain this. Each of them is delicious, and I'm going to start this way. First, the high note. I'm going to repeat that it's a privilege to be alive now. You can't afford not to understand that, especially the younger people. You can't afford not to understand that. But the truth is, that's the truth for everybody. Just to give you some just the tiniest thing, is that we stand on the precipice of entering a global community. We stand on what is happening in the world that you cannot see, is that we are living at the end of the Abrahamic religions. They're collapsing in the ethers from around us. It's the end of the half-God, half-man era. And while we sit here and we think, did you notice that? I didn't notice that. What else you got? You don't get that you're here because that's happening. You're in my audience because your spiritual meter is going zzz. And it can't find true north spiritually anymore. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the North Star again, trying to figure out what's still up there. Believe it or not, that's exactly what you're looking for. Is there anything still up there? What's up there? And if so, how do I get it? And number two, I don't want to be lied to. But I need something. You're looking for the next true north sacred route. And that's a fact, because you can't live without that. And that's something you know. You absolutely know that. So you sense that something is shifting in the sacred atmosphere, and you're absolutely correct. It is. So let's go back here. What's shifting? How do you respond to it? What's actually going on? So I'm going to give you the best of my understanding of that, which I think is somewhat maybe on target here. Once we entered the nuclear age, guys, everything changed. Why did it change? When we entered the nuclear age in the 40s, when we entered the nuclear age, imagine that while we were sleeping, we need a chair. How about that one? Okay. All right. When we entered the nuclear age in the 40s, you need to picture this. While you slept, imagine you all represent humanity. Prior to the nuclear age, but nobody paid any attention at all to the idea of how would somebody define the word energy? Light bulb, if they thought about it at all. Or they would say, I'm running out of energy, meaning I'm exhausted. That would be it. And now they go into the nuclear age. And while the world was sleeping, an experiment happens and the atom is split. And human consciousness, remember what's in one is in the whole. If one person goes to the moon, we all go to the moon. Do you understand that? So when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, we all walked down the moon. He wasn't the only one that went to the moon that day. The world went to the moon that day. Do you understand that? And from that moment on, all of us had made it to the moon. Do you get that? In that same way, when they split the atom, and these group of scientists recognized, oh my God, energy is alive. All of us entered the energy age while we slept. Which meant that when humanity woke up the next day, Now I want you to picture the invisible world, the sacred world watching us. I want you to picture the observance of the sacred world. How does heaven work? How does heaven work? How do prayers work? How does the divine work? All right, here are the new rules. You've got to, I hope to God, let me do this right. Okay. Think of the myth of Prometheus. When we split the atom, it was like Prometheus stealing the fire all over again from Zeus. So they go up and they steal the fire from Zeus. And Zeus is so angry again. Once again, we steal the fire, only it's nuclear fire. And we steal it with the intention of killing. Killing. Not cooking. Killing. And so the sacred world stands back. And what happens is, boom, we blow. We bomb Japan. We bomb. And we kill with this fire. And we celebrate it. Look what we can do now. Okay, hold that. And let's go here to human nature. And this is really important to get. From the time we have existed, we have two wheels in us. The wheel to create and the wheel to survive. And they go like this. And so no matter what happens, there's a flood, we figure out how to build a bridge. There's a this, we figure out how to do that. As soon as we created nuclear weapons, we outdid ourselves. And there's nothing we can create that can offset their capacity to destroy. Now, this is a great, big, huge, big deal. You really have to get this. For the first time in the history of us, we've created an opponent that's stronger than us, and we can't outdo it. We can't outrun it. We can't outthink it. We can't bargain with it. And what that means, and just settle into yourself, you've grown so accustomed to living under the threat of nuclear devastation that you don't even think about it anymore. You should think about that. You've just simply made the assumption it's not going to happen, and you are so wrong. You've never been more wrong in your life. You've just blocked it out because you've grown numb. You just think it couldn't possibly happen, as if we've never not used weapons that we've made. Are you crazy? There are people who can't wait to use these weapons. So here's the non-physical world. We are totally incapable of undoing the damage of this stuff. So the only other option, and this is how the non-physical world works, is for us to evolve past the capacity to want to use them. We have to change, which is how come we're on a kind of fast-forward trajectory to become creatures incapable of wanting to kill each other. And we're not there yet. But if you want to really understand what's going on and causing all the chaos in the atmosphere from the highest altitude, it's that our own evolution has been put on fast forward. Of which all of this other changes. The activation of our intuition, the activation of all of the many things that are happening are about us learning some basic mystical fundamentals like, oh my God, what I do to you, I'm doing to me. And finally getting that we are all one. Finally getting it. Finally getting the power of our choices. So from that perspective, I'm going to route us into this. Am I making any sense to you here? Okay.